Alana's heart slammed against her ribs as the firm hand wrapped around her elbow at Incheon International Airport security. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. She'd memorized the heat of that touch 6 months ago, 3 weeks. She'd managed to stay hidden for 3 weeks after walking into his office and seeing the truth. 3 weeks of sleeping in her friend's cramped Itaewon apartment, jumping at every sound, planning this exact escape. And he'd been waiting at the airport like he'd known all along. "We need to talk." Shin Young-soo's voice was silk over steel, spoken low enough that only she could hear. In her peripheral vision, she caught the sharp lines of his black suit, the dangerous stillness that made grown men step back. She tried to wrench free. His grip, gentle but absolutely unbreakable, held firm. "I have nothing to say to you." The words came out steadier than she felt. The positive pregnancy test in her purse seemed to burn through the leather, straight into her bones. She'd taken it 2 days ago in a convenience store bathroom, staring at those 2 pink lines until they blurred. 4 men in expensive suits materialized around them like shadows. Airport security hadn't even noticed. Of course they hadn't. Young-soo owned half of Seoul, and the other half knew better than to ask questions. But here's what Alana didn't know yet. While she'd been hiding in Itaewon, Young-soo had been tracking every convenience store purchase, every subway ride, every breath she'd taken. The pregnancy test receipt had landed on his desk within an hour. "You're pregnant." His dark eyes locked onto hers with that intensity that used to make her knees weak. Now it just made her want to run faster. "Good. Now you can't run." The airport noise, announcements, rolling luggage, crying children, faded to white static. Alana's throat closed. "Watch me." Something flickered across his face. Pain, maybe, or fury. With Young-soo, the two looked identical. "I already have people on your flight to Los Angeles." He spoke calmly, like he was discussing the weather, but his jaw was so tight she could see the muscle jumping. "At your mother's house in Miami, at your sister's place in Atlanta." He leaned closer, and she hated how her body still responded. The sandalwood and danger scent of him, the heat radiating off his skin. His thumb traced a circle on her wrist, right over her racing pulse. The ink on his knuckles, Korean characters she'd once traced with her lips, seemed darker against her brown skin. "You're mine, Alana. You've always been mine." The tenderness in those last words terrified her more than any threat, because 3 weeks ago, she'd walked into his office in Cheongdam-dong with lunch and excitement. What she'd found instead was the real Shin Young-soo, not the charming businessman who'd learned Spanish endearments to whisper against her throat, not the man who'd looked at her like she was his entire world. She'd seen the crime lord, cold, commanding, orchestrating deals with briefcases of cash and men with barely concealed weapons. The way he'd looked at her when she'd frozen in that doorway, not surprised, just resigned, had shattered something in her chest that still hadn't healed. Everything between them had been built on lies. "Let me go," she whispered, hating the way her voice cracked. "Please." His grip loosened, just slightly. "You think I'd hurt you?" "I don't know what you'd do." The truth burned coming out. "I don't know who you are." Airport security finally noticed the commotion. 2 officers approached, hands on their batons, speaking rapid Korean. Young-soo's men shifted, creating a wall of muscle and menace. In the chaos, Alana saw her opening. She twisted hard, her self-defense training from Miami finally useful. Young-soo's grip loosened for just a second, surprised maybe that she'd actually fight back, and she ran. Behind her, she heard his voice, sharp with command in Korean, then English. "Let her go." Those 3 words chased her harder than footsteps ever could. Alana didn't stop, didn't look back. She shoved through the crowd, her breath coming in panicked gasps, one hand instinctively pressed to her still flat stomach. What was she supposed to tell their child about the father? That he was beautiful and dangerous and she'd loved him before she'd known better? She made it to the taxi stand, threw herself into the first cab, and gasped out an address in broken Korean, a safe house in Hongdae. The driver, an older woman with kind eyes, asked something Alana didn't understand. "Please," Alana whispered in English, tears finally breaking free. "Please, just drive." As the taxi pulled away, she looked back. Yong-soo stood at the terminal entrance, hands in his pockets, surrounded by his men. The setting sun cast half his face in shadow, making him look like exactly what he was, beautiful and deadly and utterly unrepentant. He pulled out his phone, never breaking eye contact with her retreating cab. He wasn't chasing her. He didn't need to. The realization hit her like ice water. He'd let her run, which meant he already knew exactly where she'd go. And as the taxi merged into Seoul traffic, Alana pressed her hand harder against her stomach and wondered what terrified her more, that Shin Yong-soo had let her escape, or that some broken, traitorous part of her had wanted him to stop her. Will Alana make it to safety, or does Yong-soo already have her trapped? Subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. And trust me, you'll want to see how far he's willing to go to keep her. The women's shelter in Hongdae looked like salvation wrapped in peeling paint and flickering neon. Alana paid the taxi driver with the last of her cash and stumbled through the entrance, her legs shaking so badly she had to grip the door frame. A woman in her 60s looked up from behind a desk cluttered with intake forms and donation boxes. Her face was kind, the soft, weathered kind that came from seeing too much suffering and choosing compassion anyway. "Do you speak English?" Alana's voice came out rough, desperate. "I'm Sister Mary." The woman's American accent hit Alana like a lifeline. "You're safe here, honey. Whatever you're running from, it stops at that door." Alana wanted to believe her. God, she wanted to believe that any door in Seoul could keep Shin Yong-soo out. But what Alana didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know as Sister Mary led her down the narrow hallway, was that 3 buildings down, a black sedan had already parked with a clear view of her window, and the man inside had no intention of kicking down any doors. Not yet. Sister Mary didn't ask questions. She just showed Alana to a small room with a twin bed, clean sheets, and a window overlooking a narrow alley. It wasn't much, but after 3 weeks of hiding in her friend's cramped 81 apartment before the airport disaster, it felt like a palace. "There's a bathroom down the hall," Sister Mary said. "Shared, but clean. We serve breakfast at 7, but don't feel pressured to join if you're not ready." She paused at the door, her expression gentle. "I've been running this shelter for 15 years. I've seen women arrive in worse shape than you, and I've seen them leave stronger. You will too." The door clicked shut, and Alana finally let herself collapse onto the bed. Her whole body ached, from running, from fear, from the weight of carrying a child she hadn't planned with a man she couldn't trust. She pulled out her phone. 63 missed calls from Yong-soo, 47 text messages she hadn't opened. Her thumb hovered over them, torn between deleting everything and reading every word. She compromised by blocking the number entirely. There. Done. He couldn't reach her now. The relief lasted exactly 5 seconds before the guilt crashed in, because underneath the fear and betrayal, there was still the memory of his hands in her hair, his mouth against her throat, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. 6 months of falling in love didn't disappear just because she discovered the truth, but it should. It had to. Alana pressed her hand to her stomach. Still flat, still unchanged, but carrying evidence of every mistake she'd made. "We're going to be okay," she whispered to the tiny cluster of cells that would become her child. "I'm going to keep us safe." She just had to figure out how. Over the next few days, Alana settled into a routine. Sister Mary provided basics without prying. Toiletries, a change of clothes from the donation bin, simple meals. The shelter housed 6 other women, all with their own ghosts, all careful not to ask too many questions. Alana spent her mornings learning basic Korean phrases from a donated textbook. Her afternoons were for planning, researching flights back to Miami, calculating how much money she'd need, figuring out how to disappear properly this time. And her nights were for lying awake, wondering if Yong-soo was looking for her, or if he'd finally given up. On the 4th day, Sister Mary brought her a small bottle. "Prenatal vitamins," she said simply. "I noticed you've been nauseous in the mornings." Alana stared at the bottle. "I didn't tell you I was—" "Honey, I've been doing this a long time." Sister Mary's smile was knowing but not unkind. "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to share." That night, Alana took the first vitamin and tried not to think about how Yong-soo would have reacted if things had been different, if he'd been who she thought he was, if she could have told him about the baby over dinner instead of discovering it alone in a convenience store bathroom while hiding from his world. She was getting better at not thinking about him, or at least that's what she told herself. What she didn't know was that in the black sedan 3 buildings down, Yong-soo sat in the darkness with his phone in his hand, staring at the message-blocked notification. His knuckles were white around the device, the tattoos on his hands stark against his skin. One of his men, Min-jun, loyal for 15 years, cleared his throat from the driver's seat. "Boss, we could just—" "No." Yong-soo's voice was quiet, controlled, lethal. "We wait. For what?" For her to realize running was never an option. Min-jun shifted uncomfortably, and if she doesn't? Yong-soo's jaw tightened as he watched Alana's silhouette pass by the window for the 3rd time that hour, pacing, always pacing, like a caged animal who didn't understand the cage was unlocked. She just had to turn around and see him standing there, waiting. "She will," he said finally. "She just needs time to remember." Remember what? Yong-soo's thumb traced over his phone screen, over the last message he'd sent before she'd blocked him. "I love you." That was never a lie. That she loves me too. Inside the shelter, Alana finally stopped pacing and crawled into bed. Tomorrow she'd figure out the next step. Tomorrow she'd be stronger. Tonight she'd just survive. She was getting good at that. 2 weeks at the shelter, and Alana was starting to believe in miracles. She'd found a part-time job teaching English conversation at a small academy in Hongdae. Cash under the table, no questions asked. The owner, a grandmother with silver hair and sharp eyes, had looked at Alana's trembling hands during the interview and hired her on the spot. The morning sickness was getting worse, but Sister Mary kept her stocked with ginger tea and crackers. The other women at the shelter had started to warm up to her, shared smiles over breakfast, small talk about the weather, careful friendship that didn't require explanations. For the first time since she'd walked into that office in Cheongdam-dong, Alana could breathe. She should have known better. Because here's something nobody tells you about running from a man like Shin Yong-soo. The silence is never actually silence. It's just him deciding when to speak. It was a Thursday evening when Sister Mary knocked on her door with 2 cups of tea, the ginger kind. Alana smiled as she accepted the cup, grateful for the warmth against her hands. "You've been doing well," Sister Mary said, settling into the room's only chair. But something was off. The older woman's hands weren't quite steady, and she wouldn't meet Alana's eyes. "Sister Mary?" Alana's stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. That's—" Sister Mary paused, choosing her words like she was diffusing a bomb. "Alana, honey, we need to talk about Shin Yong-soo." The tea turned bitter on Alana's tongue. The cup trembled in her hands, liquid threatening to spill. "Did something happen? He's offering a substantial donation to our organization, enough to keep us running for 2 years." Sister Mary's voice was gentle, apologetic. "He wants to talk to you. Just talk." Alana set the cup down before she dropped it. "You told him I'm here." "Child," Sister Mary's expression turned painfully sad. "He already knew." The room tilted. Those 2 words, "he already knew," detonated in Alana's chest like a grenade. "What do you mean he already knew? He's known every place you've been since the airport, maybe before." Sister Mary finally met her eyes, and the guilt there was unmistakable. "He could have taken you at any point, but he's been waiting for you to feel safe enough to listen." Alana couldn't breathe. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of thinking she'd escaped, of building a life, of believing in miracles. And the entire time, Yong-soo had been watching, waiting, letting her play house while he pulled strings she couldn't even see. Her hands moved to her stomach, protective, instinctive. "How long have you known?" "Since the day you arrived." Sister Mary's honesty was somehow worse than a lie. "He called me before your taxi even pulled up." The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Alana stood on shaking legs, her vision tunneling. "I trusted you. I know, and I'm sorry." Sister Mary stood too, hands clasped like she was praying. But Alana, That man hasn't just been watching, he's been protecting you. New security system for the shelter, upgraded locks, panic buttons in every room. He sent detailed protection plans for every woman here. He's made this the safest place in Seoul. To protect his investment? The words came out sharp, acid. To protect you. Sister Mary's voice softened. He calls every night, not to check on you. He can see you're fine. He calls to ask if you're eating enough, if you're sleeping, if you need anything. Last week you had that cold and he had medicine delivered within an hour. The prenatal vitamins I gave you? He sent those too. Alana's knees buckled. She sat hard on the bed, her mind racing. Every kindness, every comfort, all of it orchestrated by the man she was running from. What Alana didn't know, what Sister Mary couldn't tell her, was that Yong-soo hadn't just sent medicine and vitamins. He'd had his personal doctor on standby 24/7, ready to come if Alana's condition worsened. He'd researched every pregnancy complication, memorized every warning sign, and nearly broke down Sister Mary's door twice when Alana's morning sickness had been particularly bad. "Where is he?" Alana whispered. Sister Mary hesitated. 3 buildings down, black sedan. He's been there since the night you arrived. 2 weeks. He'd sat in a car for 2 weeks, watching her through windows, close enough to reach but staying away. The obsession of it should have terrified her. Instead, something warm and dangerous unfurled in her chest, something that felt too much like longing. "He wants to meet tomorrow," Sister Mary continued. "Neutral location, a traditional hanok in Bukchon. He said he'll answer any question you have. Complete honesty. No more lies." Alana laughed, but it came out broken. "And I'm supposed to just believe that?" "I'm not saying trust him. I'm saying that man has been sitting in a car for 2 weeks, barely sleeping, barely eating, just watching to make sure you're safe. Whatever else he is, Alana, he's not letting you go." Sister Mary pulled a card from her pocket. Elegant script, an address in Bukchon, but the choice is still yours. After Sister Mary left, Alana sat on her bed holding the card, her whole body trembling. She should run, pack her bag, climb out the window, disappear. But where would she go that Yong-soo hadn't already thought of? Her phone sat on the nightstand. She'd blocked his number 2 weeks ago, but she'd never deleted his contact. Now she pulled it up, stared at his name for a long moment, then unblocked it with shaking fingers. The messages he'd sent before she blocked him were still there. Dozens of them. The most recent from the day she'd arrived at the shelter. "I love you. That was never a lie. Please be safe, Jagia. I'm not going anywhere. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here." Her vision blurred. She typed with trembling hands. "Why?" The response came so fast he must have been staring at his phone for 2 weeks straight. "Because you deserve the truth. All of it." Another message. "And because our child deserves a father who's more than the monster you saw in that office." Alana pressed her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back a sob. She typed, "One conversation. That's all you get. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. I'll be there." His response was immediate. "I've been alone for 2 weeks, Jagia. One more day won't kill me." The endearment. Jagia, the Korean term he'd taught her during their 3rd date while teaching her to make kimchi in his apartment, hit her like a physical blow. She threw the phone onto the bed and pressed both hands to her face, trying to hold herself together. In the black sedan, 3 buildings down, Yong-soo finally allowed himself to breathe. Min-jun looked at him with barely concealed relief. She agreed? She agreed. Yong-soo's hands were steady on his phone, but his heart was racing like he'd just survived a firefight. 2 weeks of watching her through windows, of forcing himself not to go to her, of trusting that patience would win where force never could. Tomorrow, he'd tell her everything. The truth about his family, about the undercover operation, about why he'd let her see what she'd seen in that office. Tomorrow, he'd give her the choice he should have given her from the beginning. And if she still wanted to run after that? Yong-soo's jaw tightened as he stared up at her window, at the light still glowing behind the curtains. Then he'd let her go. He'd just make sure she took his heart with her, because he sure as hell wouldn't need it anymore. The hanok in Bukchon was beautiful in a way that made Alana's chest ache. all traditional wooden beams and paper screens, a courtyard garden with a stone path leading to a private room overlooking the mountains. It was the kind of place Yong-soo would have taken her on a date, back when she'd thought he was just a successful businessman with a devastating smile, back when she'd been naive enough to believe in fairy tales. She arrived 10 minutes early, her palms sweating despite the cool October air. A staff member, older woman, kind eyes, led her to the private room and brought tea before disappearing like smoke. Alana sat on the cushion, her back straight, hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. She dressed carefully that morning. Simple jeans, a loose sweater that hid the slight changes in her body, her hair pulled back in a ponytail, armor disguised as casual clothes. And here's the thing about walking into a room to face the man who'd broken your heart. You think you're prepared. You practice what you'll say, how you'll stand, how you won't let him see you break. But then the door opens, and all those carefully constructed walls start to crack. At exactly 2 p.m., the door slid open. Yong-soo looked like hell. 2 weeks had carved shadows under his eyes, sharpened the already severe lines of his face. He'd lost weight. She could see it in the way his black button-down hung slightly loose on his frame. The tattoos on his forearms seemed darker against skin that hadn't seen enough sun. But his eyes, God, his eyes were the same, dark and intense, and looking at her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Alana. Her name came out rough, like he'd been practicing saying it for 2 weeks and still couldn't get it right. She didn't stand, didn't smile, just gestured to the cushion across from her with a hand that barely shook. You said you'd answer my questions. Something flickered across his face, hope, maybe, or relief that she was actually here. He sat, movements controlled, careful, like he was trying not to spook a wild animal. Anything, he said. I'll tell you anything you want to know. Here's what Alana should have asked first. Are you really in the Mafia? How many people have you hurt? How many laws have you broken? But instead, what came out was, did you ever love me? Or was I always just part of whatever game you're playing? Yong-soo's jaw clenched. His hands, those tattooed, dangerous hands that had once been so gentle with her, tightened into fists on his thighs. I loved you before I knew your last name. I loved you when you laughed at my terrible Spanish pronunciation. I loved you the night you fell asleep on my couch, watching Korean dramas, and I sat there for 3 hours just looking at you because I couldn't believe you were real. His voice dropped, raw and honest. That was never a lie, Jagia. That was the only true thing in my life. Alana's throat tightened, but she forced herself to stay focused. She couldn't let him derail her with pretty words and that voice that still made her insides twist. The office. What I saw that day. Tell me the truth. Yong-soo took a breath, and for the first time since she'd known him, he looked vulnerable. Scared even. 3 years ago, my younger sister died from an overdose. She was 19. His voice cracked on the number. The drugs that killed her came from my family's operation. The words landed like stones in still water. Alana's breath caught. She hadn't expected that. Hadn't expected the raw grief that flashed across his face. My family, the Shin Clan, they're one of the largest crime organizations in Seoul. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking. He said it like he was confessing murder. I was supposed to take over when my father retired. I was being groomed for it my whole life. But when Hana died in my arms in a hospital room, begging me to make it stop. He stopped, jaw working. I couldn't be part of the thing that killed my baby sister. So what did you do? Alana whispered. I went to Interpol. Yong-soo met her eyes, and she saw the truth there, the weight of it, the cost. I've been undercover for 3 years, working to bring down my own family from the inside. Everything you saw that day, the briefcases, the guns, the deals, I was setting up the final operation. We were hours away from making the arrests when you walked in. The room spun. Alana gripped the edge of the table. You're working with the police? Interpol, Korean authorities, FBI. He pulled a folder from inside his jacket, slid it across the table with careful fingers. My handler's contact information, official documentation, case files, everything. She opened it with shaking hands, official seals, photographs of Yong-soo in meetings with people in suits, in offices with government insignias, documents with classifications and stamps that looked terrifyingly real. This couldn't be real. This was insane. Why didn't you tell me? Her voice came out sharper than she intended, anger finally breaking through the shock. Why the hell did you let me believe you were a monster? Because if they suspected you knew, they would have killed you. Yong-soo's composure cracked, real fear bleeding into his voice. My uncle has people everywhere. If he thought for 1 second that you were involved, that you could testify, that you meant enough to me to be leverage, Alana, they would have tortured you just to hurt me. They would have. He stopped, his hands trembling now, too. I couldn't let that happen. So you just decided for me? Alana's anger ignited fully now, white-hot and vicious. You didn't think I deserved to know, to choose for myself? No, you're right. You should have trusted me. She stood abruptly, the folder scattering across the table. Instead, you let me run terrified through Seoul, thinking I'd fallen in love with a criminal. Do you have any idea what that did to me? Yong-soo stood too, his control finally shattering. I watched you run and it killed me. Every day for 2 weeks I sat in that car knowing you were 30 meters away, and I couldn't go to you, couldn't hold you, couldn't tell you the truth because my family still had allies who wanted me dead. Your family is in prison now though, right? Alana's voice dripped with sarcasm. So the danger's over. We can all just move on? The operation finished 2 days after you ran. His voice was tight. My father, my uncle, 17 of their top people, all arrested, but what? What Yong-soo couldn't tell her, what would send her running again, was that his uncle had escaped custody 3 days ago, that there was a target on both their heads, that the danger was far from over. But it's complicated, he finished. There are still loose ends, people loyal to my family who might want revenge. Alana laughed, but it was broken and bitter. Of course there are. Of course this isn't actually over. I'm handling it. You're handling it. She pressed her hands to her face, trying to breathe. Just like you handled everything else by lying to me. I never lied about loving you. Stop. The word came out as a sob. Stop saying that like it fixes anything. You don't get to love someone and manipulate their entire life. You don't get to have people follow me, watch me, control where I go and who I talk to, and call it protection. You're right. Yong-soo's voice dropped to barely a whisper. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry, Alana. I'm so sorry. The apology hung in the air between them. Alana wiped at her tears angrily, hating that she was crying, hating that he looked like she'd just gutted him. The baby, she said finally, voice shaking. What do you want from me? Something fierce and possessive and desperate flashed across his face. I want to be a father. I want to be there for every appointment, every moment. I want... He stopped, seeming to catch himself. But that's not fair. This is your choice. Tell me what you need. I need you to stop making decisions for me. Alana's voice steadied. I need complete honesty from now on. No more secrets, no more protection that's actually control. If there's danger, I deserve to know. If there are complications, I deserve to choose how to handle them. Done. I need space. Time to process this. You don't get to just show up at my shelter or follow me around. I'll stay away. The words clearly cost him. As long as you need. And I need... Alana took a shaky breath. I need you to prove that the man I fell in love with was real. Not the crime boss, not the undercover agent. The man who taught me to make kimchi and laughed at my terrible Korean and looked at me like... Her voice broke. Like you were my whole world. Yong-soo finished softly. Because you were. You are. Alana wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to so badly it hurt. One chance. She whispered. You get one chance to prove this is real. And if you lie to me again, if you manipulate me or control me or decide what's best for me without asking, I'm gone. I understand. The hope that bloomed across his face was devastating and tentative all at once. One chance is all I need. Alana nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She gathered her bag, needing to leave before she did something stupid like cross the table and let him hold her. At the door, she paused. "Young-soo?" "Yes?" "Your sister. I'm sorry for your loss." His eyes closed briefly, pain etched in every line of his face. "Thank you." She left before she could see him break. Outside, the autumn air bit at her tear-stained cheeks. Alana pulled out her phone, hands still shaking, and ordered a taxi. Inside the Hanak, Young-soo stared at the scattered documents, at the empty cushion where she'd sat, and let himself feel the full weight of what he'd almost lost. His phone buzzed. "Minjun, sir, we have a problem. Your uncle's people were spotted near Hongdae. They might know about the shelter." Young-soo's blood ran cold. He'd promised to give her space. He'd promised to stay away, but if his uncle's people found her, there wouldn't be anything left to stay away from. Alana made it back to the shelter just as the sun was setting, painting the Hongdae streets in shades of amber and shadow. Her mind was still spinning from the meeting, Young-soo's sister, the Interpol files, the way he'd looked at her like she was the only thing keeping him alive. She needed to think, to process, to figure out if she was making the biggest mistake of her life by giving him another chance. The shelter was quiet when she entered. Too quiet. Sister Mary stood in the hallway, her face pale, hands twisted together. Two women Alana didn't recognize flanked her. Hard faces, expensive suits, the kind of people who made the air feel dangerous. Alana's first thought was simple and terrible. Something is very wrong. Her second thought, run. Alana. Sister Mary's voice shook. "These people want to talk to you." Every instinct Alana had screamed to turn around and bolt, but the woman on the left smiled, cold, sharp, and said in perfect English, "I wouldn't recommend it. We have 3 men outside covering the exits, and we convinced Sister Mary here to disable the new security system, temporarily, of course." The betrayal hit like a slap. Alana's eyes snapped to Sister Mary, who looked like she might be sick. "They said they'd hurt the other women," Sister Mary whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to—" "Enough." The woman cut her off. "Go to your room, old woman. This doesn't concern you anymore." Sister Mary didn't move, frozen in guilt and terror. Alana's hand instinctively moved to her stomach. "Who are you?" "Friends of the Shin family." The woman's smile widened. "Well, the old Shin family, before your boyfriend decided to become a traitor." The word traitor hung in the air like a blade. The man on the right, thick build, scar across his jaw, stepped forward. "Shin Young-soo destroyed an empire, put good men in prison, all because he got soft over a dead junkie sister and some misguided sense of justice." His eyes raked over Alana with open contempt. "And then he got even softer over you." Here's what Alana should have done. Stayed calm, played dumb, waited for an opening. But fear does strange things to people, and she'd spent too many weeks running to think clearly now. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, forcing her voice steady even as her hands shook. "Young-soo and I aren't together anymore. I left him." "Really?" The woman pulled out her phone, showed Alana a photograph, her and Young-soo at the Hanak taken through the window. The timestamp read 2 hours ago. "Funny, you two looked pretty cozy for exes." Alana's blood turned to ice. They'd been watching her, following her to the meeting. "Here's what's going to happen," the woman continued, her voice pleasant like she was discussing dinner plans. "You're going to come with us, nice and quiet. We'll use you to draw Young-soo out, make him pay for what he did to the family, and then—" She shrugged. "Well, we haven't decided if we'll kill you before or after we kill him. Depends on how cooperative you are." Sister Mary made a choked sound. The scarred man turned to her, irritated. "I said leave." "Please," Sister Mary's voice cracked. "She's pregnant. She's—" The words dropped like a bomb. Both attackers went completely still. Then the woman's smile turned absolutely vicious. "Pregnant?" She started laughing, cold, delighted. "Oh, this just keeps getting better. Shin Young-soo's baby." Her eyes glittered with malice. "His uncle is going to love this. We'll make him watch while we—" What none of them saw was the black sedan that had been parked 3 buildings down suddenly roaring to life. or Min Jun making frantic calls to the backup team, or the fact that Young-soo had never actually left after the meeting. He'd been sitting outside the hanok for an hour, paralyzed by the fear that he'd said the wrong thing, lost her forever, when Min Jun's warning had come through. He'd broken every speed limit in Seoul to get here. "Move," the scarred man said, reaching for Alana's arm. She jerked back, her mind racing. 3 men outside, 2 in here. No weapons she could see, but they had to be armed. If she screamed, would anyone come? Would it just get Sister Mary killed? "Don't make this difficult," the woman warned. "I'd listen to her," a voice said from behind them, cold as winter and twice as deadly. Everyone turned. Young-soo stood in the shelter's entrance, and Alana had never seen him look like this. The businessman was gone. The gentle lover was gone. This was the man who'd survived 3 years undercover in a crime family, who'd built his reputation on being more dangerous than anyone else in the room. The tattoos on his forearms seemed darker in the dim light. His eyes were black, empty, absolutely terrifying. "Step away from her," he said quietly, each word precise and lethal. "Now." The woman recovered first, laughing nervously. "There are 5 of us and only 1 of you, Young-soo. The math doesn't work out in your favor. You forgot to count my men surrounding the building." Young-soo pulled out his phone, pressed 1 button. Outside, car doors slammed in unison. 6, maybe 7, the sound echoing like thunder. "And the police unit I called on my way here. They should arrive in approximately 90 seconds. The scarred man's hand moved toward his jacket, toward a gun, Alana realized with horror. But Young-soo was faster. He crossed the distance in 2 strides, caught the man's wrist mid-draw, and twisted with brutal precision. The crack of bone made Alana flinch and look away. The man's scream was cut short when Young-soo's elbow connected with his throat. He went down hard, gasping. 80 seconds, Young-soo said calmly, turning to the woman. His hand was steady as he pulled the gun from the fallen man's jacket, checked it with practiced ease, then pointed it at the floor. Not threatening, just ready. "Your people outside are currently being detained by mine. You have 2 choices. Run now and maybe escape before the police arrive, or stay and find out exactly why my family put me in charge of enforcement before I turned on them." The woman's face went pale. She looked at her partner writhing on the floor, at Young-soo's dead calm expression, at the gun in his hand. She ran. The shelter erupted into chaos. Sirens outside, Young-soo's men flooding in through both entrances, Sister Mary sobbing in the corner. Police poured through the doors 30 seconds later, and suddenly the small hallway was full of uniforms and flashing lights and organized chaos. But all Alana could focus on was Young-soo, still standing over the moaning man on the floor, his chest heaving like he'd run a marathon, his hands shaking now that the immediate threat was over. Their eyes met across the room. He crossed to her in 3 strides, his hands coming up to frame her face, tilting it so he could search her eyes. "Did they hurt you?" "No, Did they touch you?" "Young-soo, the baby?" His voice cracked on the word, his thumb brushing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "We're fine." Alana's own hands came up to grip his wrists, needing to anchor herself. "We're okay." He closed his eyes briefly, his whole body shuddering with relief. Then he pressed his forehead to hers, breathing hard. "I'm sorry. God, Alana, I'm so sorry. I should have told you about my uncle at the hanok. I should have warned you properly instead of just having men watch the building. I should have—" "You promised me space," Alana interrupted, her voice shaking. She needed to say this before the adrenaline wore off, and she couldn't think straight. "You promised." Young-soo pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "I know. You followed me anyway." "Yes. No excuses. No justification. You had men watching the shelter this whole time. I never stopped watching." His jaw clenched, honesty brutal in his expression. "I promised to stay away, and I broke that promise before I even left the hanok. I'm sorry. But Alana—" His hands tightened on her face. "I will break every promise I've ever made if it means keeping you alive." She should have been furious, should have pushed him away, demanded he respect the boundaries she'd just set hours ago. Instead, she heard herself say, "I can't do this if you keep lying to me." "I know. I can't be with someone who treats me like I'm too fragile to handle the truth. You're right." His voice was raw. "You deserve better than that. Better than me." "I didn't say that." Alana's hands moved to his chest, feeling his racing heartbeat under her palms. "I said I can't do this if you keep making decisions for me. Your uncle escaped. That's something I needed to know. The danger we're in, that's something I needed to know." She took a shaky breath. "If we're doing this, if I'm giving you this chance, then we're partners. Real partners. That means you don't get to protect me from information just because you think it'll scare me. Even if it does scare you? Especially then." Her voice firmed. "I'm scared right now. I'm terrified. But I'd rather be scared and informed than safe and ignorant while someone hunts me." Something shifted in Young-Soo's expression. Respect, maybe, or the beginning of understanding that she wasn't going to be the kind of woman who let him make all the decisions. "Partners," he said finally. Complete honesty, even when it's hard. "Even when it's hard," she agreed. A police officer interrupted, needing statements. Young-Soo's hand slid down to lace with Alana's fingers, and she let him hold on while they answered questions, while Sister Mary gave her tearful account of being threatened, while the shelter slowly returned to something resembling order. An hour later, standing outside while police processed the scene, Young-Soo turned to her. "Come home with me, please." His voice was careful, asking instead of demanding. "Let me keep you safe until we find my uncle. I have a secure apartment, protection, resources. You'd have your own space if you want it. But Alana..." His grip on her hand tightened. "I can't let you stay somewhere he's already found once." Alana looked back at the shelter, at Sister Mary being comforted by the other women, at the police tape, at the building that had felt like sanctuary until it wasn't. "Okay," she said finally, "but I have conditions. Anything. I want daily updates on the situation with your uncle. No sugarcoating, no protection from bad news. Done. I want to meet your Interpol handler, verify your story myself." Young-Soo nodded. "I'll arrange it tomorrow." And Alana took a breath. "I want separate bedrooms. I'm not ready for that yet." Something flickered across his face. Disappointment, maybe, or longing, but he just nodded. "Of course. Whatever you need." Min-Jun was already pulling the car around, and as Young-Soo helped her into the back seat with careful hands, Alana realized she was doing it again, putting her safety in his hands, trusting him when every logical instinct said she shouldn't. But maybe trust wasn't always logical. Maybe sometimes it was just the calculated risk of believing someone could change. Somewhere across Seoul, in a hotel room that cost more per night than most people made in a month, Shin Young-Soo's uncle received a phone call. "They failed," his lieutenant reported. "Young-Soo was there. Police got involved." The uncle was quiet for a long moment. Then I'll handle it myself. Find out where he's taken her. I want to know every move they make." He hung up and poured himself a drink, staring out at the city lights. His nephew had always been his favorite. Smart, ruthless, capable. What a waste it would be to kill him. But family honor demanded it. And if the pregnant American girl had to die too, well, some prices were worth paying. Young-Soo's apartment was nothing like Alana expected. She'd braced herself for cold minimalism, dark colors, the kind of sterile bachelor pad that screamed emotionally unavailable. Instead, she walked into warmth, exposed brick walls, soft lighting, bookshelves crammed with Korean literature and Spanish language guides, and a kitchen that looked actually lived in. And on the coffee table, faded and dog-eared, was the copy of 100 Years of Solitude. She'd lent him 4 months ago, in Spanish, the one he'd been struggling through to impress her. "You kept it," she said softly. Young-Soo followed her gaze, his expression unreadable. "I kept everything that reminded me of you." He cleared his throat, maintaining careful distance. "The guest room is down. The hall. Private bathroom? Anything you need. I'll have Min-Jun bring your things from the shelter tomorrow." The formality in his voice was deliberate, protective. He was giving her the space she'd demanded, even though everything in his body language said he wanted to be closer. Alana nodded, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. Her hands were still shaking from the adrenaline crash, and every time she closed her eyes, she saw that woman's vicious smile, heard the threats about what they'd do to her baby. "Thank you," she managed. "Alana." He stopped her with just her name. "If you need anything tonight, if you can't sleep, if you're scared, I'll be awake. Just knock." She wanted to say she'd be fine. Instead, she heard herself whisper, "Okay." But what Alana didn't know as she retreated to the guest room was that Yong-Soo wouldn't sleep at all that night. He'd sit in the living room with his gun on the coffee table, checking security feeds every 15 minutes, replaying every moment of the shelter attack and cataloging everything he'd missed, every way he'd failed to protect her. The guest room was perfect. Too perfect. Comfortable bed, soft sheets, lavender scent in the air. Because of course Yong-Soo had noticed her favorite scent during those 6 months they'd been together. Of course he'd prepared for her, even when he'd had no guarantee she'd ever speak to him again. Alana lay awake for hours, her hand on her stomach, listening to the sounds of Yong-Soo moving around the apartment. Around 2 a.m., she heard him stop outside her door, just standing there, not knocking, not entering, just close enough that she could hear him breathing. She wondered if he could hear her crying. When she finally dragged herself out of bed at 8 a.m., she found Yong-Soo in the kitchen looking like he'd been awake all night, which he probably had. Dark circles under his eyes, coffee mug clutched in white-knuckled hands, the careful control barely holding. "Did you sleep?" she asked. "Did you?" He turned, and the raw concern in his eyes made her chest tight. "Not really." Alana wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the apartment's warmth. "I kept seeing them, kept thinking about what would have happened if you hadn't—" Her voice broke. Yong-Soo set down his mug, started to reach for her, then stopped himself, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You're safe now." "Am I?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "Your uncle is still out there. His people know what I look like, know I'm pregnant. You said this apartment is secure, but for how long? Until he figures out where we are? Until someone on your team gets bribed or threatened or—" "Alana." "I need honesty, Yong-Soo." She wrapped her arms tighter around herself, trying to hold it together. "Complete honesty like you promised. How bad is this, really?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone, pulled up a message, and handed it to her. The message was from an unknown number, time-stamped from last night. "Bring the girl. Let's talk like family. Maybe we can find a solution that doesn't end in bloodshed." Alana's blood ran cold. "Your uncle sent this?" "Last night, while you were sleeping." Yong-Soo's jaw was tight. "I almost didn't show you. I wanted to protect you from it. But you're right. You deserve to know." What does he mean, talk like family? "It means torture me while forcing you to watch, use you and the baby as leverage, then kill us all anyway." Yong-Soo's voice was flat, matter of fact. "My uncle doesn't negotiate. He punishes. This is a trap." The casual way he described their potential deaths made Alana's knees weak. She sat down hard at the kitchen table. "So what do? "We stay here. Stay safe. Let Interpol and my team track him down." Yong-Soo sat across from her, and she could see the exhaustion, the fear he was trying so hard to hide. "Agent Chen is meeting us at 2 p.m. She'll explain the security protocols, answer your questions, verify everything I've told you. And if your uncle finds us first, he won't." But Yong-Soo's hands were shaking slightly as he said it. Alana stared at this man who'd infiltrated his own family, who'd risked everything to bring down a criminal empire, and realized he was terrified, not for himself, for her, for their baby. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. He looked up, surprised. "For what?" "For walking into your office that day, for seeing something I shouldn't have, and running instead of trusting you enough to ask questions." She laughed bitterly. "If I'd just waited 12 more hours like you said—" "Don't." Yong-Soo's voice was fierce. "Don't apologize for my mistakes. I should have told you the truth from the beginning, should have trusted you with it instead of trying to protect you by keeping you in the dark. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration and regret etched in every line of his face. I was so afraid of losing you that I lost you anyway. The honesty in his voice cracked something open in Alana's chest. I want to trust you again, I do. But Yongsu, every time I start to feel safe, something reminds me that you manipulated my entire life for weeks, that you had people following me, watching me, controlling where I went. I know. He didn't make excuses. And I know saying I'm sorry doesn't fix it. I know I have to earn your trust back piece by piece, day by day, and that it might take years or it might never happen at all. So why are you trying so hard? The question came out smaller than she intended. The baby? Is this all about the baby? Yongsu looked at her like she'd just stabbed him. The baby is, God, yes, I want to be a father. I want to be there for every moment. But Alana, his voice dropped, raw and honest and devastating. I fell in love with you before I knew about the pregnancy. I spent 6 months falling deeper every day, terrified you'd figure out who I really was and leave. When you did leave, it nearly destroyed me. The baby is a miracle I don't deserve. But you're the reason I'm still breathing. The confession hung in the air between them, heavy with truth. Alana didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to reconcile this vulnerable, honest man with the one who'd had her followed for weeks. I need time, she said finally. I can't just forgive everything because you're saying the right things now. I know. Yongsu nodded, accepting the boundary even though it clearly hurt. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. At 2 p.m., Agent Sarah Chen arrived. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, the kind of woman who'd seen everything and believed nothing until proven otherwise. She spread files across Yongsu's dining table like a card dealer, each one another piece of evidence. 3 years, Agent Chen said, her English crisp and professional. Shin Yongsu has been one of our most valuable assets. The Shin organization was responsible for approximately 40% of drug trafficking in Seoul, 15% of weapons smuggling in East Asia, and numerous human trafficking operations. Taking them down required someone on the inside, someone they trusted completely. Alana flipped through photographs, Yongsu in meetings, surveillance footage, incident reports. In one photo, she could see bruising on his jaw. In another, what looked like blood on his shirt. He's been injured, she said, looking up at Agent Chen, multiple times. 17 times over 3 years, Agent Chen confirmed, twice nearly fatal. The last incident was 3 months ago. He took a bullet meant for me during a meeting that went sideways. Spent 4 days in a private medical facility before returning to his cover. Alana's eyes snapped to Yongsu. The scar on your ribs. You said it was from childhood. His expression was guilty. I lied, I'm sorry. He's been protecting people this entire time, Agent Chen continued. Not just gathering intelligence. He's personally prevented 6 human trafficking shipments, negotiated the release of dozens of victims, and fed us information that led to the arrests of over 50 high-level criminals across 3 countries. The files painted a picture of a man who'd sacrificed everything, family, safety, identity, to make things right. And now? Alana's voice was steady, even though her hands trembled. His uncle escaped. What's being done? Agent Chen's expression tightened. We're actively pursuing. But I need to be honest with you, Ms. Rodriguez. Shin Taiwan is extremely dangerous and well-connected. We've tracked him to 4 different locations in the past 3 days, but he's always gone before we arrive. He has resources, loyal people, and a personal vendetta against his nephew. How long until you catch him? Could be days, could be weeks, maybe longer. Agent Chen met her eyes without flinching. I can't promise you safety. I can only promise we're doing everything possible. That's not good enough, Alana said flatly. I know. Agent Chen's honesty was almost worse than a lie, but it's all I have. After Agent Chen left, Alana sat at the dining table, staring at the files, her mind racing. Weeks, maybe longer, living in fear, looking over their shoulders, waiting for Yongsu's uncle to make his move. I should have told you about the bullet, Yongsu said quietly from the doorway. About all the injuries. I I didn't want you to worry. I would have worried more if I'd known you were lying. Alana looked up at him. Do you understand that? Every lie, even the ones meant to protect me, just makes it harder to trust you. I do now. He crossed to her slowly, sat in the chair Agent Chen had vacated. No more lies, even about the hard things, even when I think the truth will scare you. Even when the truth will scare me, she agreed. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid pressing down between them. Your sister, Alana said finally. Hana, tell me about her. Not how she died, who she was. The request clearly surprised him. His grip tightened on the edge of the table. Why? Because I want to understand what drives you, what made you willing to risk everything. She met his eyes. And because if we're doing this, if we're trying to build something real, then I need to know all of you, not just the parts you think are safe to show me. Young-soo was quiet for so long she thought he might refuse. Then he smiled, small, sad, genuine. She was brilliant, wanted to be a doctor, used to practice sutures on fruit in our kitchen and drive our mother crazy. His voice softened with memory. She was fearless, the only person in our family who wasn't afraid of our father. She'd argue with him about everything, politics, business ethics, how he treated people. She sounds like she would have liked you better this way, Alana said softly. The version of you who fights against what your family built instead of perpetuating it. The day before she died, she told me she was proud of me. Young-soo's voice cracked. I just closed some dirty deal for my father, something that made me sick. But Hana looked at me and said, You're going to be better than him someday. I know you are. He stopped, jaw working. She died believing I'd become everything I hated. She never got to see me try to make it right. Alana reached across the table, covered his hand with hers. Not romance, not forgiveness, just human connection, one grieving person to another. She'd be proud of you now, she said. What you did took more courage than anything else ever could have. Young-soo turned his hand over, gripping hers like a lifeline. I don't know how to do this, how to be worthy of you, how to prove I've changed when everything I do feels like it's just another form of control. You start by being honest, even when it's hard. Alana squeezed his hand, and you let me make my own choices, even when you don't agree with them. Even when those choices might put you in danger, especially then. She pulled her hand back, needing the distance. I'm not fragile, Young-soo. I'm scared, yes, but I'm not helpless, and I need you to see the difference. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. Partners. Partners, she agreed. That night, Alana lay awake in the guest room again, listening to Young-soo pace the living room. Around midnight, she got up, stood at her door with her hand on the knob, debating. She could hear him out there, close but not too close, respecting her boundaries even though it was clearly killing him. She opened the door. Young-soo was sitting on the couch, gun on the coffee table, security feeds pulled up on his laptop. He looked up when he heard her door open, surprise and concern flashing across his face. Can't sleep? He asked. Can you? No. Honest, direct. Alana walked over, sat on the opposite end of the couch, not touching, just present. Tell me about the security, what you're watching for. So he did. He explained the camera placements, the motion sensors, the panic protocols. He showed her how to access the feeds from her phone, how to trigger the alarm, how to contact his team if something went wrong. He treated her like a partner instead of something fragile to protect. And slowly, piece by piece, Alana felt the walls around her heart start to crack. At 3 a.m., she fell asleep on the couch, her head tilted against the cushions. Young-soo carefully draped a blanket over her, then returned to his vigil, watching the security feeds and the woman sleeping 6 feet away from him. Outside, 3 buildings down in an unmarked van, one of Shin Tae-won's men lowered his binoculars and made a call. Found them. Apartment in Yongsan-gu. High security, but I've been watching for 2 days. They have patterns, vulnerabilities. Tae-won's response was measured, patient. Good. Keep watching. I want to know everything. When they sleep, when they're most relaxed, when his guard drops, we only get one chance at this. And then? Then we remind my nephew that betraying family has consequences, and we make sure everyone knows what happens to those who help him." The line went dead. Inside the apartment, Yong-Soo's phone buzzed with an alert from his perimeter security. Movement detected 3 buildings down. Same location. 3rd night in a row. His blood ran cold. They'd been found. Yong-Soo woke Alana at 4 a.m. with a hand over her mouth and terror in his eyes. She jolted awake, panic spiking, but he pressed a finger to his lips, silent, urgent, and she understood immediately. Something was wrong. He removed his hand slowly, leaned close enough that his lips brushed her ear. "We've been compromised. We need to move. Now." Alana's heart slammed against her ribs. She nodded, adrenaline flooding her system, wiping away any remnants of sleep. Yong-Soo helped her up from the couch, his hand firm on her elbow, guiding her toward the bedroom. "Get dressed. Warm clothes. We have maybe 10 minutes." His voice was barely a whisper, controlled, but she could hear the edge of fear underneath. "How do you know?" Perimeter alarms. Same surveillance position 3 nights in a row, but 20 minutes ago the heat signature disappeared. They're not watching anymore. His jaw clenched. They're moving. Alana's hands shook as she pulled on jeans, a sweater, her jacket. Through the bedroom door, she could see Yong-Soo on his phone, typing rapid-fire messages, his other hand checking the gun at his waist. She'd never seen him like this, completely focused, every movement precise. The undercover operative fully surfaced. It should have terrified her. Instead, some primal part of her brain whispered, "This is who he really is. Dangerous, deadly, yours." Here's the thing about crisis. It strips away all the pretense, all the carefully constructed walls. And what Alana realized as she laced her shoes with trembling fingers was that she trusted him completely. With her life, with their baby's life. Even after everything, she trusted him. "Ready?" Yong-Soo appeared in the doorway, a go-bag slung over his shoulder. "Where are we going?" "Safe house outside the city. Min-jun is bringing a car to the underground garage. We use the service elevator. Avoid the lobby entirely." He moved to her, cupped her face with one hand, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. "Stay close to me. No matter what happens, you stay close. Understand?" Alana nodded, her throat too tight to speak. They made it to the service elevator without incident. The building was silent, that eerie 4 a.m. quiet when even the city seemed to hold its breath. Yong-Soo positioned himself between Alana and the elevator doors, one hand resting on his concealed weapon. The elevator descended. 15 floors, 14, 13. At the 7th floor, it stopped. Yong-Soo's entire body went rigid. His hand moved to his gun, drew it in one smooth motion, held it low and ready. The doors opened. Empty hallway, flickering fluorescent light. Nothing. But Yong-Soo didn't relax. "That's not right. This elevator doesn't stop on 7 unless someone calls it." "Maybe it malfunctioned?" Alana's voice came out smaller than she intended. "Maybe." But his finger was on the trigger, his eyes scanning the hallway with predatory focus. The doors started to close. A hand shot through at the last second, triggering the sensor. The doors reopened. Shin Tai-wan stepped into the elevator. He looked like Yong-Soo, same sharp features, same dangerous elegance, but older, harder, with eyes that held nothing but cold calculation. 2 men flanked him, guns already drawn and pointed directly at Alana's stomach. "Nephew," Tai-wan said pleasantly in Korean, then switched to English, his eyes sliding to Alana. "And the pretty American who's caused so much trouble." Yong-Soo moved instantly, putting himself completely in front of Alana, his gun aimed at his uncle's head. "Let her go. This is between us. Lower your weapon or my men put 3 bullets in her before you can pull the trigger." Tai-wan's voice was calm, conversational. "You know I'm not bluffing." What Alana could see over Yong-Soo's shoulder was the absolute certainty in those men's eyes. They would shoot. They wouldn't hesitate. Yong-Soo knew it too. His hand trembled, barely, but she felt it, before he slowly lowered his gun. "Smart boy." Tai-wan smiled. "Now kick it over here." The gun skittered across the elevator floor. One of Tai-wan's men picked it up. They were unarmed, trapped, completely at his mercy. "Here's what's going to happen," Taewon said, pulling out his own weapon. "You're both coming with me. We're going to have a family conversation about loyalty, about consequences, about what happens when you betray your blood." He pressed the button for the parking garage. "And then I'm going to make you watch while I kill her. Slowly. And that baby she's carrying. And then, only then, will I kill you." Alana felt the color drain from her face. Young-Soo's whole body went rigid with barely controlled rage. "Unless," Taewon tilted his head, "you'd like to make this easier on everyone. Tell me where Agent Chen is. Give me the locations of the safe houses, the names of everyone who helped you betray us. Full cooperation, and maybe, I make her death quick." "Go to hell," Young-Soo said flatly. "I expected that." Taewon sighed. Disappointing, but expected. The elevator reached the parking garage. The doors opened onto darkness. The lights had been cut. Alana could make out shapes, vehicles, but beyond that, nothing. "Move," one of Taewon's men ordered, jabbing his gun into Alana's ribs. She stumbled forward, Young-Soo's hand finding hers in the darkness, squeezing once, reassurance or goodbye, she couldn't tell. They were halfway across the garage when the lights suddenly blazed to life, blinding after the darkness, and Minjun's voice rang out from behind a concrete pillar. "Drop your weapons! Interpol, you're surrounded!" All hell broke loose. Taewon's men spun toward the voice, guns raised. Young-Soo used the split-second distraction to grab Alana and throw them both behind a parked car as gunfire erupted. The sound was deafening, shots ricocheting off concrete, car windows exploding, men shouting in Korean and English. Alana pressed her hands over her ears, curled into herself, felt Young-Soo's body covering hers completely. "Stay down," he shouted over the chaos. "Don't move, don't look up, just stay down." More gunfire. Someone screamed. Glass shattered above their heads, raining down in glittering shards. What Alana didn't know, what she couldn't see from her position pressed against the cold concrete, was that Agent Chen had arrived with a full tactical team, that Min Jun had been stalling in the garage, setting up the ambush, that Young-Soo's people had been ready for this exact scenario. But what none of them had counted on was Taewon's desperation. A hand grabbed Alana's hair, yanked her backward with brutal force. She screamed, and Young-Soo spun around just in time to see his uncle, hauling Alana to her feet, gun pressed against her temple. "Everyone stop!" Taewon's voice cut through the chaos. "Stop shooting or she dies!" The gunfire ceased instantly. Alana could feel the cold metal against her skin, could feel Taewon's breath on her neck, could see Young-Soo's face, absolutely destroyed, terrified in a way she'd never seen. "Let her go," Young-Soo said, his voice breaking. "Uncle, please. She's pregnant. I know what she is." Taewon's grip tightened in her hair, making Alana whimper. "She's leverage. And you're going to get me out of here, nephew, or I paint these walls with her brain." Agent Chen stepped into view, hands raised, weapon lowered. "Mr. Shin, there's no way out. We have 50 agents surrounding this building. You kill her, you die. Let her go, and we can negotiate." "I'm done negotiating." Taewon started backing toward a black van at the edge of the garage, dragging Alana with him. "And I'm done watching my family fall apart because my nephew got soft." Young-Soo followed, hands raised, desperate. "Take me instead. Let her go. Take me. Isn't that what you wanted? To make me pay?" "You'll pay by watching her die." They were almost to the van. Alana could see Taewon's escape route, straight shot through the garage exit, probably had a driver waiting. If he got her in that van, she was dead. The baby was dead. She had one chance. Alana went completely limp, letting her full weight drop. The sudden shift threw Taewon off balance for just a second. But a second was all Young-Soo needed. He moved like lightning, closing the distance, his hand shooting out to wrench the gun away from Alana's head. But Taewon was fast too, twisting, and suddenly they were grappling for the weapon. The gun went off. The sound echoed through the garage like thunder. For one horrible, eternal moment, Alana didn't know who'd been shot. Then Taewon stumbled backward, red blooming across his shoulder. Not fatal, not even close, but enough. Agent Chen's team swarmed in, weapons trained, shouting commands. Taewon went down hard, agents piling on top of him, securing his hands behind his back. Young-soo dropped to his knees beside Alana, his hands frantically running over her body, checking for injuries, his face pale with terror. "Are you hurt? Did he hurt you? The baby—" "We're okay." Alana's voice shook violently. "We're okay, I promise." He pulled her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe, his whole body trembling. She felt wetness on her neck, tears, she realized. Young-soo was crying. "I thought I lost you," he choked out. "I thought, I'm here. She held him just as tightly, both of them kneeling on the cold garage floor while chaos erupted around them. Agent Chen approached, her expression grim. "We need to get you both out of here. There might be more of his people." Young-soo nodded, helped Alana to her feet with shaking hands. Min-jun pulled the car around and they climbed into the back seat, both still trembling with adrenaline. As the car pulled away, Alana looked back to see Taewon being loaded into an ambulance, hands cuffed, surrounded by armed agents. He caught her eye through the chaos and mouthed something that looked like, "This isn't over." But it was. It had to be. "Where are we going?" Alana asked, leaning against Young-soo's shoulder. "Safe house, just for tonight." His arm tightened around her. "Then tomorrow we figure out what comes next. Your uncle said to leave Seoul, to disappear. He's going to prison for the rest of his life. He doesn't get to dictate terms anymore." Young-soo pressed his lips to her forehead. But maybe he was right about one thing. Maybe it's time to start over somewhere new, somewhere safe. "Miami?" Alana asked quietly. "If that's what you want." She thought about it. Leaving Seoul, leaving the fear and violence and constant looking over her shoulder, starting fresh somewhere warm, near her family, building a life that wasn't defined by Young-soo's past. "Yeah," she said finally, "I want that." His arms tightened around her. "Then that's what we'll do." But as Min-jun drove them through Seoul's pre-dawn streets, neither of them could shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted. They'd survived. They'd won. But the cost, the fear, the violence, the near loss of everything had changed them both in ways they were only beginning to understand. Tomorrow, they'd figure out how to move forward. Tonight, they just needed to survive. 6 months later, Miami humidity wrapped around Alana like a familiar embrace as she stood on the balcony of their Brickell apartment, watching the sun paint Biscayne Bay in shades of gold and pink. Her hand rested on her swollen belly. 7 months now, their daughter kicking like she was already impatient to meet the world. Behind her, she could hear Young-soo in the kitchen, humming something in Korean while he attempted to make her mother's recipe for ropa vieja. 6 months since that nightmare in the Seoul parking garage. 6 months since they'd boarded a plane and left everything behind. Sometimes it still didn't feel real. "She's active today," Young-soo said, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of juice. He'd traded his designer suits for linen shirts and had a tan that made the tattoos on his arms stand out even more. He looked lighter somehow, younger, like the weight of his family's legacy had finally lifted. "She gets it from you," Alana said, accepting the glass. "Restless, always moving." He pressed his hand to her stomach, and their daughter immediately kicked against his palm. His smile was pure wonder, the same expression he got every time he felt her move. Strong, too, like her mother. Here's what Alana had learned about building a life from ashes. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was small moments like this. Young-soo learning to cook her family's recipes, her teaching him Spanish slang that made her mother laugh, the way he'd spent 3 weeks building a crib by hand because he wanted their daughter to have something he'd made with love instead of money. It was choosing each other every single day, even when it was hard. "Your mom called," Young-soo said, his hand still on her stomach. "Wants to know if we're coming to Sunday dinner. Something about teaching me how to make proper tostones because apparently mine are, what did she say, an insult to Puerto Rican cuisine." Alana laughed. "She's not wrong. You keep making them too thick." "I'm Korean. We don't have a cultural framework for fried plantains." But he was smiling. That soft smile he saved just for her. "Though your abuela said mine were acceptable, so I'm choosing to believe I'm making progress." It had taken 3 months for Alana to feel safe enough to introduce Yong-soo to her family. 3 months of therapy, of processing trauma, of learning to trust that they really were safe, that Tae-won was in maximum security prison, that the remaining Shin organization had scattered, that they could actually build something normal. Her mother had been skeptical at first, understandably given that Alana had shown up pregnant by a man she'd never mentioned, with a story that sounded like a K-drama plot. But Yong-soo had won her over slowly, patiently, showing up to family dinners with flowers and broken Spanish and genuine effort to be part of their world. Her father had taken longer, still watched Yong-soo sometimes, like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. But last week, he'd asked Yong-soo to help him fix the car, and they'd spent 4 hours in the garage together. Progress. "I have something to tell you," Yong-soo said suddenly, his voice careful. Alana's stomach dropped. She knew that tone. "What happened?" He pulled out his phone, showed her a message from Agent Chen. Trial moved up. Tae-won pleading guilty to avoid death penalty. Life sentence, maximum security, no parole. It's over. The relief hit so hard Alana's knees went weak. "It's really over? It's really over." Yong-soo's arms came around her, steady and sure. Chen confirmed it this morning. He'll never get out, never threaten us again. "We're free, Jagia. Actually free." Alana pressed her face into his chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. 6 months of tension finally releasing. "Why didn't you tell me right away?" "I wanted to be sure, wanted to wait until it was official." He pulled back to look at her, and there was guilt in his eyes. "I know I promised complete honesty. I should have told you he was going to trial, that there was a possibility." "Stop." Alana pressed her fingers to his lips. "You told me as soon as you knew for sure. That's enough. That's honest enough." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." She smiled through her tears. "We're safe. Our daughter is safe. That's all that matters." But here's what Alana was learning about healing. It wasn't linear. Even with Tae-won locked away forever, even with their life in Miami blooming into something beautiful, there were still nights when she woke up gasping, still moments when a loud noise made her flinch, still shadows of fear that hadn't quite faded. Trauma didn't disappear just because the threat was gone, but it got easier. Day by day, moment by moment, it got easier. That night, after dinner on the balcony as the city lights sparkled below them, they lay in bed together, Yong-soo's hand on her stomach, feeling their daughter move, his expression soft with wonder. "I want to marry you," he said quietly. Alana's breath caught. "What? Not tomorrow, not until you're completely ready. But someday." He propped himself up on one elbow, looking down at her with those intense dark eyes. "Someday, when you're sure this is what you want, I want to marry you. I want our daughter to see her parents choose each other every day. I want to stand in front of your family and mine and promise to love you for the rest of my life." Tears pricked Alana's eyes. 6 months ago, the idea of forever with him had seemed impossible. Now it felt like the only thing that made sense. "Ask me again," she whispered. "What?" "Ask me again, right now." Understanding dawned in his eyes. "Alana Rodriguez." "Yes." She didn't let him finish. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to forever. Yes to building this life together. Yes to all of it." The kiss was desperate and tender and full of everything they'd survived to get here. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Yong-soo rested his forehead against hers. "I don't have a ring," he said, almost laughing. "I don't need one." Alana's hands framed his face. "I just need you, and this life, and our daughter. That's enough." "It's more than I ever thought I'd have." His voice cracked. "More than I deserve." "Stop that." She poked his chest gently. "You've earned this. You've earned us." They made love slowly, carefully, mindful of her pregnancy, but desperate to be close. And afterward, wrapped in each other's arms as the Miami night pressed against their windows, Alana felt something she hadn't felt in months. Peace. Complete, absolute peace. 2 months later, Elena Hannah Shin entered the world at 3:47 a.m., screaming her displeasure at the harsh hospital lights and the indignity of being born. Young-soo cried harder than Alana did. "She's perfect," he kept saying, holding their daughter with trembling hands like she was made of glass. "She's absolutely perfect." Elena had Alana's nose and Young-soo's eyes, dark and intense even at 2 hours old. She had a full head of black hair and lungs that could wake the dead. Alana's mother arrived first, took one look at her granddaughter, and burst into tears. Her father followed, gruff and uncomfortable, until Elena wrapped her tiny fist around his finger, and then he melted completely. Young-soo's mother flew in from Seoul 3 days later, nervous, uncertain, meeting her son's fiancé and granddaughter for the first time. But when she held Elena and whispered to her in Korean about her Aunt Hana, about how proud she would have been, Alana saw the grief and love in the older woman's eyes and understood. They were all broken in different ways, but they were healing together. The wedding happened 6 months after Elena was born, on Miami Beach at sunset with both families in attendance. Alana wore a simple white dress that accommodated her postpartum body, and Young-soo wore a linen suit that made him look like he'd stepped out of a dream. Min-jun stood as best man. Agent Chen attended, unofficial but smiling. Even some of Alana's friends from Seoul had flown in, the ones who'd helped her hide, who'd kept her secrets, who'd believed in her when everything fell apart. When Young-soo said his vows, half in English, half in Korean, his voice breaking on the promises, Alana understood that this was the real ending. Not the dramatic confrontation in a Seoul parking garage, not the escape or the fear or the running. This. Choosing each other in front of everyone they loved, building something real and lasting from the wreckage of everything they'd survived. "I love you," he said finally, abandoning his prepared speech entirely. "I love you, and I will spend every day of the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of that love." "You already have," Alana whispered, and kissed him as the sun set over the ocean, and their families cheered, and their daughter, held by her grandmother, kicked her little feet in approval. The reception was loud and chaotic and perfect. Alana's family taught Young-soo's family to salsa. Young-soo's mother showed Alana's mother how to make proper kimchi. The two grandmothers argued lovingly over who got to hold Elena more. And late that night, when the party had finally wound down and they stood on the beach watching the waves, Young-soo pulled Alana close. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "Not a single one." She leaned into him, feeling the solid warmth of him, the safety she'd found in his arms. "You. Only that I didn't meet you sooner, that we wasted time on fear and lies when we could have had this. We have it now." Alana turned to face him, the moonlight painting his face in silver. "That's what matters. We have now and tomorrow, and every day after that. Forever," he agreed, and kissed her with the ocean as their witness and the future stretching out before them like an open road. 1 year later, Alana stood in the nursery of their new house, a real house with a yard and room for Elena to grow, watching Young-soo rock their daughter to sleep. He'd gotten good at it, had a whole routine of Korean lullabies and gentle swaying that worked like magic. "She's out," he whispered, carefully placing Elena in her crib. The crib he'd built by hand that had taken 3 attempts and 1 minor injury, but was now solid and perfect. They stood together in the doorway watching their daughter sleep, her little chest rising and falling, completely safe, completely loved. "I have news," Alana said quietly. Young-soo looked at her, eyebrows raised. "I'm pregnant again." For a moment he just stared. Then his face split into the biggest smile she'd ever seen. He swept her up, carefully, always so careful, and spun her around in the hallway. "When did you find out?" "This morning. I'm only about 6 weeks, but—" She laughed at his expression. "You're happy? Happy?" He set her down, cupped her face with both hands. "Jagiya, I'm—" He switched to Korean, words tumbling out too fast for her still improving language skills, then back to English. "I'm so happy I can't even find the words." "Good." Alana pressed her hand to her still flat stomach, because this one was definitely planned. "Unlike our first surprise," he said, his hand covering hers. "Best surprise of my life." "Mine too." He kissed her forehead, her nose, her lips. Everything with you is the best surprise of my life." They stood in the hallway of their home, their sleeping daughter in the room beside them, a new life growing inside Alana, and the ghosts of their past finally, truly laid to rest. The Shin crime family was gone. Tae-won would die in prison. The fear and violence and running were over. What remained was this: love, family, the beautiful, ordinary chaos of building a life together. And it was more than enough. It was everything. 5 years later, the Rodriguez Shin household was beautifully chaotic. Elena, now 5, was teaching her 3-year-old brother, June, how to make sandcastles on Miami Beach, while their parents watched from under an umbrella. Alana, pregnant with their 3rd child, laughed as Young-soo tried and failed to keep sand out of the picnic basket. "You know what I was thinking about?" Alana said, her hand in his. "What?" "That airport in Seoul, when you grabbed my arm and told me I couldn't run." She smiled. "If someone had told me then that this is where we'd end up, you wouldn't have believed them." "No." She squeezed his hand. "But I'm so glad I stopped running." Young-soo pulled her close, kissed her temple, and watched their children play in the surf. "So am I, Jagiya. So am I." If Alana and Young-soo's journey from that terrifying airport confrontation to their beautiful Miami Beach life had you holding your breath, hit that like button. It really helps me know what stories you want more of. And drop a comment telling me, would you have given Young-soo a second chance after everything he put Alana through? Or would you have run and never looked back? I love hearing your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe because I've got more Afro-Korean romance stories coming your way. Dark, possessive heroes who fall hard, strong heroines who don't back down, and all the tension and passion you loved in this one. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's next. Thanks for riding this emotional roller coaster with me. Until next time, stay loving those morally gray men who'd burn the world down for their woman.